Hello and welcome to another edition of Digging Deep with Diggz. And on today's show, we have a very special guest, Damian Nunez, managing editor of the student newspaper, The Picket. And we're asking the question, how has this year's presidential election impacted your relationships with other people who have opposite views? We decided to take this question to the people of this university and see what they had to say. Let's take a look.
Now, the election has not really impacted any of my relationships because I'm not educated in the sense of anything involving the political election, so therefore I don't try to let anything impact how I view my relationships in relation to their own political views.
I don't know, it has a little bit, but sort of not. It has made it a little bit more difficult to deal with my roommate because he's extremely conservative and I'm extremely liberal. But overall it's not that bad until you get with like extreme people who were usually pretty extreme before it started.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it has affected my relationships around me. It gets very weird, and we can see that we don't have the same views. Yeah, the relationship tends to separate a little bit.
So I would like to first give thanks to Kiera Goins, Molly Staley, and Jessica Sharpless for the responses. Damian, the responses were as I expected. You know, you have those of us, like myself, who are just not in the loop in terms of this year's presidential election. So I know personally, I haven't established an informed opinion. Now that's not saying that I don't have certain inquiries about these candidates that I would like answers to, because I do. And I've seen things that I don't like coming from both parties. But that's as far as my position goes. As we've seen in the responses, you have situations where two people, they may be roommates, friends, or associates, and they have completely opposite views, but they still manage to agree to disagree. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't really impact how they interact with one another. And we always know that one person who's very strong and opinionated as far as their political views goes, way before this election. Mm-hmm. So in those cases, how you guys interacted probably hasn't changed much because it's always been that way. But then there's those situations where people's true colors have been revealed during this presidential election. Particular views and feelings you didn't know existed, and this may have caused your relationship, how you interact, to be altered a bit, you know? So you tell me, how has this year's election impacted your relationships with other people who have opposite views?
Well, you know, Deshaun, this election really hasn't affected my, personal relationships that much. Like you, there's a lot that I dislike coming from both sides. I don't tend to identify with one party over the other these days. I can usually find something to agree with and disagree with pretty much everybody. But I think we need to focus more on, what common threads run between, all of our respective ideologies. Most people, regardless of, whether they're a Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, they want the same things out of life. They want, freedom, security, safety, and, opportunity to live the type of life they want. As Americans, though, we have some disagreements as to how we want to achieve those things. We need to remember that we're on the same team. Now, I think that, modern discourse has kind of degenerated. Maybe it's always been that way. Of course, I haven't been around that long. But it seems to be very inflammatory and very, very negative. Like, you just look at, the way the candidates talk about each other, talk about each other's supporters. It's not so much on issues as it is about personality. Exactly. And it becomes the same thing when we're talking about, friends discussing politics with each other. And I think it can be tied a little bit to, maybe how media covers it as well with the 24-hour news cycle. People need to present like really short little bits on the different topics, and it's much easier to say that someone who disagrees with you is, evil or stupid than, to do the research or learn about, Keynesian economic systems or international affairs, which are, really complex issues that require a certain depth of understanding.
Right.
But the parties, the candidates, and, anyone who wants to influence people's opinions, they find that it's much easier, simple, and more effective to just, go in and make that emotional appeal.
Mm-hmm. It's an attention grabber, yeah.
Yeah, it's an attention grabber. And I think, it's in their best interest, if you're, running an election or, a party official, it's in your best interest to, alienate the other, to separate your people from their people, us and them,
Mm-hmm.
Reinforce their biases. But it's not in the best interest of the country.
Right.
And I think as responsible citizens, we need to be able to, step back ourselves, not take the bait, not get, emotional and start, throwing bricks at each other, and just start to take inventory of, things that unite us. This country has been through a lot. We've, made a lot of progress in a lot of areas. We've become much better at, accepting other, races, cultures, nationalities. There's still progress to be made, of course, but I think we've maybe even regressed a little bit when it comes to, respecting different ideologies in our neighbors. And I think that's something that we need to really reflect upon going forward if we want to be successful as a country and, maybe avoid getting such divisive candidates in the future.
Now, I remember you making the analogy that people are starting to watch politics like a football game.
Mm-hmm.
And the only difference is, the winning team goes home, the losing team goes home, but these are people's lives that are being affected.
Yeah.
So we can't start to watch politics like reality TV.
Yeah.
It's not the Kardashians, okay? But thank you, Damian. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Deshaun.
I look forward to having you again. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. This is Deshaun Long reporting for Digging Deep with Diggz. It's been real.